divine beings from the heavens, the first living beings to set foot on planet Earth. According to some historians, the divine forces that designed human beings, and according to others, the divine forces that shaped our faith. So who are these Anunnaki? Where did they come from? How did they appear? And why have they become the most important and mysterious characters in human history? In this special episode of Find the Truth, we will try to unravel the secrets of the internet's most talked about mystery. Our journey will take us to the deepest reaches of the history of civilization, as well as the origins of religions and mythology. And in the end, we will try to find the answers to the questions on our minds together. The year is 1968, and after years of research and travel, investigative writer Eric von Daniken releases his extraordinary book that will take the whole world under its authority and, so to speak, open a new chapter in popular culture. In his book, Chariots of the Gods, Daniken presented us in detail how independent civilizations across the globe have somehow always had an interconnected symbolism, mythology, and more interestingly, architectural and technological development. And in the wake of all these claims, he created a new definition that would become the talk of the town for years to come, the ancient astronaut theory. According to the ancient astronaut theory, our planet was visited by extraterrestrials a long time ago, and humanity experienced a civilizational leap by building structures that seemed impossible at the time. To support this theory, Daniken gives us examples of formations like the Nazca lines in Peru, which can only be seen from the sky, or structures like the pyramids in Egypt, which would have been impossible to build given the mathematics and geography of the time, and the incredible similarity of myths from different civilizations around the world, such as the art of stonemasonry or creation myths, and ask the question, what if the history we are told is completely wrong, and human civilization is based on a common past that is much, much older than we know? Based on this theory, the researcher Zacharias Hitchin wrote a book called The 12th Planet in 1976 and shared it with the world in a series of 7 books called The Famous Earth Chronicles. And he introduced a more specific definition into our lives. Anunnaki. Now, normally in the videos that you will come across on the internet and on television programs, you will see our beloved conspiracy theorists only, but only Zacharias Sitchin's claims in these books, as if they were all completely proven facts. In fact, it has become such a halal that whenever the topic of the Anunnaki comes up, everyone says that they came from Nibiru by following this route, as if their parents came from Anunnaki. Then Halalu was exiled to Mars, and that's his face there. The Anunnaki did this and that on this day, and they tell us about it as if they had been there. Now, it is one thing to believe in the Anunnaki. It is another thing to talk about them as if they were your uncle's son. I am not going to quote any of Zacharias Sitchin's books in this video because there is a common problem in the books. Yes, he is a researcher who has researched the subject for years, who has made good cross connections, but he covered everything in between with his own interpretations. Now, of course, he is a writer. You may say that he can do this to create a good story, but these filled gaps have started to be told as pure facts because of today's disinformation. That's why the end of the rope is lost. Personally, in this video, I will try to cross-link historical texts, epics, and myths and beliefs from other ancient cultures to at least connect those gaps with more tangible facts and present you the big picture. Yes, I will use some of the information that Zacharias Sitchin has given us, but at least we will investigate the subject with an analysis system where the tangible connections are a little bit more prominent. The first stop of our journey is, of course, Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, the land where this story was born. According to the history of humanity told to us in 4500 BC, we suddenly come across the Sumerian civilization in all its glory. The first civilization in history to use writing, astronomy, advanced mathematics, and many other sciences. For example, the first human rights laws, the first hospital and doctor system, the first library, and in the concept of the historian, they all came into our lives with the Sumerians. Now, what does one say without asking? How could these men suddenly appear on the stage of history in such an advanced way? And more importantly, how did these developments suddenly start to be used, like starting from the middle of a book? This is where some historians started to ask the following question. Had humanity discovered some things long before the Sumerians, and the Sumerians were just an extension of them? This question gave rise to the curiosity that led you to watch this video. When we examine ancient myths such as Atrahasis, Enuma Elish, and the Epic of Gilgamesh, we find a superior group of ruling beings separate from humans. The Anunnaki, literally it means a lineage of celestial kings from an Ankai. No historical relics or epics tell us exactly when and why these beings came to Earth. So Zechariah Sitkins claimed that they came to Earth 400,000 years ago to mine gold because their atmosphere weakened is actually an unsupported claim. Yes, there is some truth in it, but we cannot say that this is the whole story. In the Epic of Enuma Elish, we find the following interesting, if not clear, information about the timeline. The epic tells us about a war of the gods that took place before the formation of the world, and that the world was formed after these great battles, and that the Anunnaki who were created after these events were tasked with establishing the order of the world. Although the emergence of these beings is a mystery, we have some information about what they did after they came to Earth. And perhaps the most important of these is that they officially started our history. That is, they created humankind. In the late 19th century, archaeologists such as Sir Henry Laird and Hormuz Rassam, despite their limited resources, were still trying to uncover the traces of the ancient Sumerian cities. And one day a huge archaeological site was discovered meters under the ground in the areas of the cities of Nippur and Ur. Dozens of statues, precious artifacts, and thousands of tablets that would shatter all stereotypes about human history. It took years for experts to analyze and translate these tablets. But when the translations of the texts called on Adana, Enki, and Ninmah were finally completed, the information that had astonished everyone awoke from their thousands of years of sleep and revealed itself to us. The creation of man. If you listen to the words of the representatives of today's Abrahamic religions, you will hear over and over again that human beings are the most beautiful, the most advanced, the most sacred of all creatures, that all life on earth is at our service. I said especially the representatives of the religions because actually, except for Judaism, in the Abrahamic religions, there is not much information that humans are such super holy beings. In the Quran, it only says that humans were sent to this world as caliphs, and in one or two verses, it says that they are honorable beings. That's it. And yet it is repeated countless times that man's only duty is to obey, to serve. So all this talk about man being supreme, that all beings are at his disposal and so on, is nothing but the ego of man. In fact, if you watch the world news, you will see for yourself why this claim is so false. In fact, in the tablets of Enki and Ninmah, which are thousands of years older than the books of the Abrahamic religions, the situation is exactly the same and even more depressing. Since similar information is also found in the Epic of Atrahasis, I will now give you a combined version of the information in these epics. When the Anunnaki first arrived on the planet, there was a race one level lower than the Anunnaki in the divine hierarchy that served to meet their basic needs. The Agigis. This subgroup was doing infrastructure and superstructure works, such as building the temples of the Anunnaki, opening canals, and feeding the Anunnaki. As I said in all my previous videos, although ancient civilizations called the Anunnaki gods divine beings, they also gave information that they were beings in need of shelter and nutrition at all times. Don't forget this. The group of beings we are talking about here are flesh and bones, living beings, so why are they called gods? You will get the answer to this question in a moment. All this hard work is too much for the Agigis, and they revolt against the Anunnaki, so to speak. We can also call it the first strike in the history of the world. Enki, the god of water, wisdom, and creativity, starts to work on the solution to this problem, and he is assisted in this project by the goddess Ninmah. Throughout their experiments, the two of them try to create a creature capable of serving them. At first, some organs and limbs do not work as desired, and the experiments fail. But in the end, according to the meaning of the epic, the clay, which symbolizes the use of something from the world, which Zechariah also called monkeys, the blood of the gods, and a balanced mixture of some other substances, the first human being was created in the image of the gods, exactly as desired. The Adapa with the male gender. O my mother, the creature you will name is made. Put the image of the gods on him. Mix the clay of bottomless water. Form his arms and legs. O my mother, tell me the fate of the newborn. He is a human being. Later on, these stages of creation will be repeated and the population will be overpopulated as humans will reproduce with the female of their own species. In Sumerian texts, the name of the first created male is given, but not the name of the first created female. Enki loves Adapa, the first human being he created, very much and adopts him as his own son. As a result, he begins to pass on to him everything from his own knowledge: agriculture, science, laws, names of things around him. Now, this is an important point because you have heard this story elsewhere. The Quranic concept of the creation of Adam and teaching him the names, the knowledge. And he taught Adam all the names. Then he showed them to the angels and said, "Tell me the names of these if you are truthful." I will go into this in more detail later in the video. People who have the basic knowledge begin to serve the gods under their sovereignty by paying homage to them. They build ziggurats, which are their homes. Later on, this concept will evolve into churches, temples, and mosques, which are called the houses of God. The gods are fed by giving them red meat, fruit, good vegetables, beer, and wine. Again, this event will lead to the birth of the concept of sacrifice and its inclusion in the holy books in the future. In short, all the drudgery that the Igigis once did is now given to a subspecies of human being who is a slave laborer. This includes working in the mines. The mining issue is an extremely important detail because both in the Enuma Elish tablets, in the stories of Zisha and Enki, and in the Sumerian Kings list, we find information about the Anunnaki's fondness for gold and how to extract it. Zechariah claimed that the Anunnaki used this ore to repair the atmosphere of their planet. But as I said before, this is a hypothetical claim and has not been proven. But what is true is that the Anunnaki really valued this gold mine. In fact, for thousands of years in human civilizations, gold has always been regarded as a divine metal, a gift worthy of the gods, and a symbol of divine power. For example, the Egyptian pharaohs would cover themselves with gold water and dust and appear before the people to show them that they were divine rulers. And this custom is also a tradition inherited from the gods in Egyptian mythology. Because in ancient Egyptian belief, gold was directly recognized and revered as a metal of the divine gods. It was even believed that this metal held the secret of the gods and that only they could use it to accomplish their divine deeds. In my previous videos, I have illustrated the close connection between the concept of divine power and technology. And gold is one of the most important materials used in technology today. Isn't that an interesting coincidence? In Greek myths, the gods lived in golden palaces, and most of their belongings were made of gold. In Hindu myths, gold is directly referred to as the metal of the gods, and temples were decorated with gold plating. Why the Anunnaki valued this metal so highly is not yet clear. But one thing is clear. Seriously, this metal was of great importance. It is useful to interrupt here, because once again I want to remind you that the Anunnaki are not mythological heroes, but beings with human behavior patterns, human bodies, and human needs. Yes, Sumer and many other civilizations worship them as gods, divine beings, but in fact they are flesh and blood. And we see this clearly from the detailed descriptions in the epics. They fall in love, they have behaviors such as jealousy, hatred, and love. They eat and drink. They have ugly and beautiful people. They are just much more advanced and physically bigger than humans. Don't forget this and keep this information in mind throughout the video. Now, some of you may be saying, are these guys stupid? Why did they taste the flesh and blood gods in front of them as gods? It is a logical question, and the answer is actually very simple. The more ignorant a person is, the more he attributes divine meanings to events he cannot explain. Let me give you a simple example of this. During the Second World War, a very interesting event took place. An American airbase was built in the northeast of Papua New Guinea in order to stop the Japanese advance in the region, and intensive air cargo deliveries began. In the Asmat region near the base were tribes that had never had any contact with the modern world before. As supply boxes were parachuted in from the air, sometimes these supplies would fall into the tribal areas. The American soldiers did not touch them to avoid trouble. Years later, after the end of the war, researchers who went to the region to make a war documentary encountered a very interesting scene. The locals had made a statue of an American cargo plane out of bamboo trees and started worshiping it. According to them, these god airplanes flying in the skies were sending them food and supplies from the heavenly plane, but after a while, when they ran out of food and supplies, the tribe thought that the god airplanes were angry with them, so they made a bamboo statue of the plane and began to pay their respects to it so that the gods would send them food boxes from the air again. You understand, don't you? Sometimes the emergence of a religion is as simple as that. We ascribe divine qualities to something we don't understand. We invent appropriate worship. We invent holidays. We hang those who question it, and then it goes away. Look, these men even worship the airplane they only saw in the air. Imagine that you are the first created human beings who don't know anything. You are confronted by highly advanced and large creatures from outer space. Their power is all-powerful compared to you. So what did you expect to happen as a result? Of course, people started to worship them. The epics tell us that over time, humans multiplied, their voices became louder, and they became reluctant to serve the gods. Symbolically, this can be interpreted to mean that people started to develop and began to see themselves as godlike beings, because then Enlil becomes extremely angry at their progress and disrespect and orders them not to be warned about the coming flood. In this way, it is decided that all humans will die, and then a more obedient human species will be created from scratch. This is an interesting point because the Anunnaki somehow detected that the flood was coming, and then they say we will remake them in a more obedient way. Remember this, and you'll understand the importance of it in a moment. But Enki is very attached to people, and he doesn't want them to perish. For this reason, he appears to Ziusudra, one of his favorite people, in a dream and tells him to build a ship against the coming catastrophe and to protect his family and the animals he specified with this ship. Ziusudra does Enki's will and survives the terrible flood, and at the end of the deluge, his ship sits on a mountain. Then the second period of life of gods and humans begins. This story is taken from the epic of Ziusudra, which is part of the Atrahasis. In 1872, as a result of studies in the field of Nini and Kaza, the same story appeared again. Only the names have changed. Enki comes to Utnapishtim's tent to warn him of the impending catastrophe and gives him detailed information about how to build a ship while the tent cloth is between them. Utnapishtim then builds the ark in 7 days and hides his family, relatives, artists, and various animals in the ark. After 6 days and 6 nights of flood, Utnapishtim sits on the mountain, and after waiting for a while, he starts to release birds from his ship, and when the last raven he released does not come back, they realize that the flood is over and they go ashore. Meat is cooked in 7 cauldrons as a sacrifice to the gods. Seeing them, Enlil rages and asks how they survived, but Enki intervenes and calms him down by saying punish them for their sins, but don't be so harsh again, and they eat together. As I said before, these events mark the beginning of the second period of humans and gods. As far as we understand from the cross myths, this period, which lasted for ages, ends once again with a great event, and the gods leave the world, and the Sumerian civilization as we know it emerges on the stage of history in 4500 BC. Now, experts, including me, who are 1,000 times more knowledgeable than me, are a bit confused here, because there is a flood period, and then there is the period when the gods fought each other. With my own research, I think that the flood came first, and then the second period ended with the destruction known as the Tower of Babi event. This is still not an event that we have a clear chronology, because there are tens of thousands of tablets that have not yet been found, and this period of history remains a bit in the dark. I don't think we will learn these facts anytime soon because the US and other imperial powers, as you may know, have already devastated the region with ISIS. Many archaeological sites were bombed and destroyed, including some archaeological sites where these tablets were found. When Iraq fell, almost all the tablets kept in the National Museum were smuggled to America by military operation. This is not a complete theory. There are even videos of all of this. So the truth is being seriously hidden and will continue to be hidden. Anyway, in the light of the information we have, in general terms, this is the basic story of the Anunnaki and the story of Angel, celestial beings from outside the world who created the human species to serve them. So what evidence is there to strengthen our hand about this belief? After the information I have just mentioned, you may have the following question in your mind. What if the events described in the Quran, the Torah, and the Bible are exactly the same in these myths from thousands of years ago? Or are these guys the origin of religions? Here begins the second main part of the video, where we will find the answers to all these questions. When we look for traces of the Anunnaki, we find similar myths and similar interactions in all corners of the world, just like the Sumerians. For example, In the Anunnaki hierarchy, we find three basic god figures, Anu and Lil and Enki, the leader of the entire council. In total, the Anunnaki council consists of 12 gods and godchildren. Similarly, when we look at Egyptian mythology, we see the main god Amun and the next most important characters, Osiris and Set. In ancient Greece, the trinity of Kronos, Zeus, and Poseidon, and the knowledge of the 12 main gods and goddesses living on Olympus are almost identical to the Sumerian belief. This concept of a council of 12 gods and goddesses would later appear in Christianity as the 12 apostles of Jesus. In Hinduism, this trinity appears as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the supreme creator. In the Americas, this group of three gods is Hunapku, the main creator, and below him Itzamna and Kukulkan, Quetzalcoatl. In the same way that this trinity repeats itself over and over again, the myths and knowledge related to them also repeat themselves. For example, the flood is written to have happened for the same reason in all civilizations in the world, just as the Sumerians talk about it. The corruption of the people, the fact that they stopped paying homage to the gods and developed on their own, even the way it happened, the way the events unfolded, the fact that the people who survived were saved by a ship, and then the god or gods forgave the people, and the new age began, is told in exactly the same way wherever you go in the world. The figure of a god from the heavens who teaches people to civilize. And then one day this god leaves the world, saying that he will come back to save humanity from the coming destruction. This story is always the same in all cultures. In fact, the belief in a God who will come back has been transformed into the belief in a Savior Messiah in the early Abrahamic religions, and later into the belief in a Savior Mahdi because of hadiths taken from Israelite sources. Remember again the tribe that worshiped the airplane. Man is the same everywhere. He embellishes and embellishes, glorifies and glorifies something that has a very simple origin. And in the end, because of his own lie, he forgets what the truth is. This example is the best summary of the belief in the Mahdi today. Because according to the Quran, if you seek salvation or help from a being other than Allah, you are committing shirk and apostatizing from religion. Keep that in mind as well. I don't want to go into the details of this subject and make the video unnecessarily long, because I have actually made videos on almost all of them before. I will leave them in the explanation section. Make sure you watch it so you can see the big picture. Just remember this here. These civilizations are thousands of kilometers apart, and we can say that they do not have the slightest communication with each other. But for some reason, their descriptions of these beings are exactly the same. Now, I'm sure many of you are wondering how the Anunnaki shaped today's culture and religions. So let's get into the subject without making you more curious. I have just told you about the story of the flood in Sumerian myths and epics. Now let's look at how this story is handled in the Abrahamic religions. If we go in order in the book of Enoch, the flood is told to us as follows. The Creator is angered by the people who do business with fallen angels and learn science and civilization from them. Because in the eyes of the Creator, man's sole purpose is only to obey, not to become godlike like them. For this reason, the Creator sends a flood to destroy both the giants, the Nephilim, born as a result of the relationship between the fallen angels and humans, and those good people, and brings the end of living things. In the Torah, the event is described as follows. Heavenly, divine beings take a liking to human women. In the Torah, these beings are called Elohim. Elohim is the plural of the word Elohe, and it really means gods, the powerful, the shining ones. So it tells us about a community. Yahweh is the ultimate deity above them. These Elohim have affairs with human daughters, and Nephilim are born, which the Torah calls giants. After a while, the Lord God realizes this and regrets having created humans and sends a flood to destroy them all. In the meantime, he warns Noah, whose descendants he loves, and tells him to build an ark and hide his family and animals in it. After 7 days, when Noah finished the ark, the flood came, swallowed everything, and lasted for 40 days. At the end, Noah's ark sits on a mountain. Noah releases the birds, and when they don't return, Noah realizes that the flood is over, and he gets off the ark and cooks meat to sacrifice to God. Now, this is interesting. God smells the meat and is pleased and says, I will not again curse the earth because of man, for the inclinations of the human heart are evil from childhood. I will not destroy all souls again, as I am doing now. Isn't this almost exactly the same story as in the Sumerian texts? Only there in Lil and Enki have this conversation between themselves, while here they are united under the figure of a single god. In this way, the Torah has in its own way prevented polytheistic belief. In the Quran, the story is told in 7 surahs and about 20 verses. God sends Noah as a messenger to a people, and after hundreds of years, he tells Noah that he is going to destroy them with a flood because they have become corrupt and have stopped obeying him. And he orders Noah to build an ark. Actually, the verse here is exactly like this. So we told him to build an ark under our supervision, and according to our revelation, a strong and artful ark. So there is a plural, and there is a physical description of it as under our supervision. In my Quran video, I gave you information about the I, we, and he concepts in the book. Those who have watched the link will have established the link. After the designated people and animals enter the ark, the waters, which could swallow mountains, sweep everything away, and humanity begins anew. The Quran has almost completely removed the symbolic details of all the books that preceded it and has dealt with the event in a very simple way. And it does not go into detail, even if the subject matter may seem a bit rambling to those who read it. But the leitmotif is exactly the same as the Sumerian one. God is angry with people and decides to destroy them and warns Noah. Of course, the influence and similarity of the Anunnaki on religions and beliefs does not end with the myth of the flood. Let's multiply the examples a little more. When we consider the concept of creation, Sumerian legends give us the following information. According to them, in the beginning there was a vast water named Namu in the universe. Namu, who is also a conscious being. From this water grew a gigantic mountain. His son Enlil split the mountain in two, and the top of the mountain became the sky, and the bottom became the earth. The god of the heavens and the goddess of the earth filled this part with plants, trees, and water. Then animals were created, and finally the gods who would rule them all, the Anunnaki, were created. You will see how detailed and mind-boggling this creation myth is in my upcoming Enuma Elish video. This narrative and symbolism is also mentioned in the Torah's Torah portion of Deuteronomy as follows. The Spirit of God was moving on the face of the waters. God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let the waters be separated." And God made the dome. He separated the lower water from the upper water, and God called the dome the sky, and the dry ground below the dome the earth. The surah goes on to say that the earth was filled with plants and animals, just as in Sumerian texts. In the Quran, Surah Anbiya 30 says, "Do they not know that when the heavens and the earth were conjoined, we separated them and made all life out of water?" Although the Quran generally deals with these issues in a very superficial way, the symbolism and word choices are the same in both the Torah and Sumerian texts. Let us come to the creation of man. We have just learned the details about the creation of man in Sumerian myths. In a nutshell, we are a species created as servants to do the work of the Anunnaki, beings from the sky. It is a recurring detail in many ancient cultures around the world that the concept of clay, the blood and essence of the ones, is used in our structure. Now let us look at the expression of this event in the heavenly religions. Indeed, your Lord is Allah, who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and then sits on the throne. Notice the word throne here. The throne means the throne where kings sit. It means throne room. Let us go into a little more detail. It is He who created the heavens and the earth in 6 days when the throne was on water. It is the most merciful who created the heavens and the earth and all that is between them in 6 days and then settled on the throne. The Torah likewise tells us that creation took 6 days, and on the 7th day God rested. Notice that both the Quran and the Torah insist on this concept of 6 days of creation. But what does that have to do with it? For those of you who wonder why all this doesn't happen when Allah says be, the answer to this question is found in Sumerian texts. According to current data, when we analyze the various Sumerian creation tablets, we come across 6 basic creation steps, phases. The first is the formation of order from primordial chaos. In other words, the emergence of matter from the universal waters I mentioned. Second, the creation of the gods. 3, the separation of heaven and earth. 4, the formation of the world. 5, the creation of life. 6, the creation of human beings. This is the origin of the 6-day creation concept in the Abrahamic religions. In fact, if you read the creation chapter in the Torah, you will see that even the items are almost identical. Let's continue with the details of the creation of man. We return to the concept of clay and the information that man was created in the image of the Anunnaki. Surely we created them out of a clay that was viscous. From the clay of the earth, Allah made man and breathed into his face the breath of life. The man became a living soul. After Allah had created the earth, the heavens, the stars, the plants, the animals, he said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let him rule over all things on earth." And Allah created man in his own image and made them male and female. My Lord said to the angels, "I will surely create a human being from clay, and when I have completed him and breathe into him of my spirit, fall down prostrate to him." Allah, O Satan, what prevents you from showing respect by prostrating to the one I created with my two hands? Is it your pride, or are you one of those who hold high office? How is that? Isn't it a bit surprising? We already know the Sumerians. According to them, these beings are flesh and bones. But in both the Torah and the Quran, not only do they repeat almost identical information from the Sumerian texts, but they also describe God as a physical being. In fact, I'm not a big fan of hadiths, but for those who say there is no religion without hadith, let me share these two authentic hadiths. God created Adam in his own form. When God Almighty finished creating the creatures, he lay down on his back. At that time, he put one foot on top of the other. It is not fitting for anyone to do anything similar to this. Think about the rest. There are dozens of hadiths like these. In both the Torah and the Quran, God the Creator is described as if he embodies more than one personality trait. Sometimes he is forgiving and compassionate, but most of the time he is described as punitive and to be feared. Sometimes he refers to free will and post-mortem judgment, while at other times he intervenes or destroys people without waiting for the afterlife. God, in particular, is portrayed in the Torah as a being with very human moods and emotions. Proponents of the ancient astronomer theory argue that the main reason why the figure of God in modern religions has tendencies that are contradictory and similar to human emotions and behaviors is the effort of these modern beliefs to unify the contrasting characteristics of the characters Enki and Enlil under a single roof. You can recognize this nuance by reading the Quran, the Torah, and the Bible, not within a logical approach. Frankly, I don't think that a being who has the power to create all of existence would shower a tribe the size of today's town with meteorites because they had homosexual relations and fornication had proliferated. If that were the case, there would not be a speck of earth left. The similarity of some of the basic concepts of creator in the books of Abrahamic religions with the Anunnaki is not limited to texts like the one just mentioned. When we look at symbolic concepts in worship, we see that religions were influenced by the Sumerians. For example, the ritual of sacrifice I just mentioned. In fact, while sacrifice was an act to feed the gods and to please their hearts, after the gods physically left the planet, it turned into a symbolic ritual and evolved into an effort to reach the gods who could no longer communicate directly with them as before. Some societies even offered their most precious human life as a sacrifice in times of calamity in the hope that the gods would respond. Once again, we find the origins of the concepts of sanctuary, worship, and sin and good deeds in Sumerian belief. In the giant ziggurats where the Anunnaki lived, people would make wishes and pray to them. In order for these prayers to be accepted, they would offer them the things they liked as an offering to whoever was the ruling god of that city. The exact equivalent of the concept of sin and good deeds is mentioned in the Sumerians as follows. If people did not meet the needs of the gods properly, in a way that would please them, or if they did not behave in a way worthy of them, this would anger the gods and they would punish them severely. For example, Enlil once ordered the total destruction of the city of Ur just because he was angry with the people. We often see similar concepts of destruction in the Quran and the Torah. Cities and tribes that disobey God are destroyed with a strange sound from heaven. When we go into the etymological origins of the words, things get a little more interesting. Let's take the names Anu, Enlil, and Enki, the three greatest Sumerian gods. The name Anu, the chief creator, evolved into Enuma in Akkadian. In the Egyptian language, it started to be used as Amun or Amon, and at the end of the worship, it was extended to Amon. Some etymologists claim that because they lived in Egypt for many years, this action became doctrinally embedded in their symbolism and began to be used as Amen in Judaism and later in Christianity, and finally as Amen in Islam. But remember, this is not something that historians and linguists are 100% sure about, but it is a strong theory, because if such a similar word has been used for worship in exactly the same way for so many years, you have to think a little bit. Let me give you another interesting fact. The name Allah in Islamic culture and beliefs is actually derived from the word al-ilah. In English, it means the gun, which may not be the exact equivalent if we translate it into Turkish, but it means the actual God. This word El is also the root of the Hebrew words Elohim and Eloha, which refer to God in Hebrew and in the Torah. But here the problem arises. Elohim actually means powerful celestial beings, as I mentioned earlier, and it is a word that refers to a plural group. Its singular Eloha refers to a single being at the highest level of this group. Here's what's messing things up. Both words, whether singular or plural, are not really referring to the omnipotent creator as we know it. Rather, it is used to describe physical creatures. And this word has evolved over time into Elaha in Aramaic, Allaha in Syriac, and Ilaha in Arabic. This is one of the reasons why the pagan Arabs also called their idols deities. The word Allah was derived to mean the ultimate deity at the top of this hierarchy of deities. But look, we have the same problem here as in the Torah. Even though Allah, Al-Ilah, represents a deity at the top of that hierarchy of idols, it did not emerge as them separate and him separate. Al-Ilah emerged as part of that hierarchy. While some etymologists argue that the name Allah actually comes from the root Elaha or El, which was previously used for idols, others claim that the name Allah was created after Islam to refer to a single creator, and this issue is still debated. But the fact remains that the word Allah was actually used in the pagan Arab period, because to give the simplest example, the father of the Prophet Muhammad was named Abdullah, which means slave of Allah. And such names were frequently used at that time, and in many pre-Islamic Arabic literary works, the names of Allah and idols were often written side by side. So the idea that the name Allah was actually the leader of the pre-Islamic Arab idols seems to predominate. By the way, it is also useful to know the truth about the phenomenon of idols. Idols are objects used to symbolize specific deities, and each of them actually refers to the gods of ancient beliefs in a historical context. The most well-known example of this is that the three idols of the Kaaba, Lat, Uzza, and Vanat, are actually based on the Sumerian goddess Inanna, so an Anunnaki. When you analyze it like Baal, like Hubal, yes, you will see that idols like Nasr are all rooted in this belief. Of course, in the thousands of years that have passed, they have branched out much more. This is why I take care to use the term Almighty Absolute in my videos, when referring to the actual creator, because according to this approach, Allah, Elila, El, refers to Anu, the Sumerian chief god, Anunnaki Anu according to some etymologists, and to Enlil, the ruler of the world Anunnaki according to others. It is an interesting subject that is still debated. The last point about the similarity between the Anunnaki and religious systems is the issue of human beings who are obliged to obey, which Enlil once emphasized. In the Atrahasis, the Enra epic, the Enki and Ninmah tablets, and countless other sources, the same phenomenon repeats itself over and over again. Obey the gods and you will not be punished. These punishments can be individual, or they can be multiplied to the examples I have just given, such as Enlil destroying the city of Ur, or destroying people with a complete flood. This phenomenon manifests itself in Egyptian belief as Ma'at. This concept means that people obey the gods in a proper way, by staying within their boundaries, and in this way you will be rewarded with peace in the other world. Otherwise, your soul will be subjected to eternal torment in the worst aspects of the other world, Duat. The Akkadians also believe that people who do not serve and respect the gods, Marduk, Enki, and Enlil well, properly will be thrown into the other realm of hardship and suffering called Aralu, while those who succeed in obedience and propriety will be sent to Dilmun, where fertile lands, abundance, and peace prevail. So the concepts of heaven and hell are slowly taking shape. You already know this in the Abrahamic religions. This concept of obedience comes across in an extremely harsh way, and in the Quran it is repeatedly described how the tribes who disobeyed and did not obey God's rules were destroyed. As I already told you in the Prison World Theory video, the word Islam means to obey, to surrender, and Muslim means a person who obeys, who surrenders. This is why the Quran emphasizes that Islam is the religion in the sight of God. People are given the clear message that your religion, in other words, your behavior pattern is to submit and surrender. Those who do not obey will be destroyed, both in this world and will be subjected to various tortures in hell in the afterlife. Let me give a few examples of these disobedient tribes from Sumerian texts. In various ancient texts, such as the Hymn of Works, the royal inscriptions of Meskelamduk, and the instructions of King Shuvilgi, We are told that Engil himself appointed rulers who worshipped him unconditionally and embraced his power. He gave them various gifts and power in exchange for obeying his orders. And when they did not obey his rules, Engel destroyed them and their cities. We find a very similar account in the Quran. If we want to destroy a city, we inform its leaders of our command. They disobey and rebel there and deserve punishment. So we destroy them completely and raze it to the ground. How many generations have we destroyed after Noah? O criminals of Mecca, you are no more worthy than they. How many a people did we destroy, spoiled by living conditions and prosperity? Here are their houses. They were not inhabited after them, except for a very short time, and they became desolate. We have inherited them. I read similar verses to you in my Quran video when I was explaining some of the logical contradictions in the book and why the Almighty Creator is trying so hard to destroy some tribes. Anyway, man will be judged in heaven or hell according to his choices. I asked, what is the reason for this? The Anunnaki and their influence on religions is a very deep and shocking relationship. The deeper you go, the more you witness the breaking down of many things that you see as taboo, and naturally you start to get confused. But a quest is a quest, and if your goal is really to find the creator or the truth about the subject or to unlock the secrets of the history of religions, I think it's a journey you should take. Otherwise, you will continue to sleep with the tales you are told, and one day when you wake up from that sleep, it will be too late. We have come to the last part of our long journey, and here we will explore a little bit how the understanding of governance shaped by the Anunnaki has shaped today's culture and our way of life. Those who say that thousands of years have passed and there are no Anunnaki left should take a deep breath. I have already mentioned that the concept of a lineage of ruling kings was born in the land of Sumer with the Anunnaki. In fact, Sumer literally means the land of high kings, the land of shining kings. The texts give us the following interesting information, although it is not clear. Under the absolute rule of the Anunnaki, a period of people who were inferior to them but played a role in the administration. Now, information about the details of this period is very limited, and we don't know exactly how far it goes back in history. Between 1908 and 1904, a team of archaeologists, including the renowned Sumerologists Helman Heapred, Stephen Langdon, and Leonard William King, excavated the cities of Nippur and Nineveh and found extraordinary tablets that shattered our concept of human history as we know it. The famous Sumerian kings list. The list tells us in detail how many years each king reigned in the Sumerian city-states. But for those who ask what is so extraordinary about this, I would like to say that the list dates back to almost 250,000 BC. First on this list of extraordinary kings is a familiar name, Alulim or Adapa, who ruled the sacred city of Eridu, the first city the Anunnaki founded on Earth. Adam. The text on the tablet reads as follows. After the kingdom descended from heaven, the kingdom was in Eridu. Alulim became king in Eridu. He ruled for 28,800 years. He ruled for 28,800 years. So you realize this is important information, don't you? Is the list over? Of course not. The tablet gives us the details of 10 other kings who lived before the flood and how many thousand years they ruled which city. And the tablet also tells us that these lineages disappeared with the flood. After the flood, between lines 40 and 256, the tablet tells us that 23 kings ruled for a total of 24,510 years. Then you see that both the lifespan and the duration of the rule of these kings gradually decreases, and finally the events are connected to the present day. What is confusing here is the possibility that the flood phenomenon may be much older than we think, or that humanity may have experienced more than one flood in the last 250,000 years. This is a subject that I am still researching, and when I clarify it, or at least when I can gather the crumbs a little bit, I will definitely share the video with you. I leave the links to these sources in the description. Be sure to check them out. Look, these are the periods of thousands of years when these people or semi-humans were in power. We don't even know how much further back the period before that goes. For Zacharias, he said that it dates back to 400,000 BC. After his death, some scientific studies started to claim that Homo sapiens emerged in this time period. Coincidence? It could be a coincidence. But I am not a person who believes in coincidences. In short, the history of humanity, which we don't even know that we don't know, is completely different and goes much further than what is told to us in books. Although we find information that proves this day by day, unfortunately, as you know, the detailed research and sharing of these with the public is not very transparent. Anyway, let's continue with our topic. This tens of thousands. maybe hundreds of thousands of years old concept of governance gives rise to the following phenomenon in history as we know it: the divine right to rule. Now, since I am going to deal with the post-Anunnaki period, the people I will talk about will be normal people. For example, as I said at the beginning of the video, the pharaohs used to cover themselves with gold dust and tell the people that they were of divine descent and therefore they had the right to rule. Pay attention to this line. People who claim to be of divine descent and therefore consider themselves superior to normal people and act as if they are obliged to rule them. This concept is the biggest reason for the birth of monarchy. In fact, these men's belief in their Anunnaki lineage or divine lineage is so perversely molded that incest is not prohibited in monarchies just to protect the purity of that lineage. A good example is the kingdoms of Europe. As far as has been made public since 1700, almost all European monarchies, from Spain to England, from Denmark to Russia, are related to each other, and marriages take place between these relatives all the time. For example, Queen Victoria of England is a relative of Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. Things are so intertwined. As I said, this is fate as we know it. Apart from that, similar marriages were also made between powerful families of those times. One of the biggest reasons for this was the attempt to protect the divine lineage. In symbolism, this divine lineage is called the blue blood group, and they are considered superior to people symbolized by red blood. The point where blue and red mix is a hybrid, a combination of gods and humans. In other words, the lineage of the Nephilim mentioned in the Torah in the book of Enoch. I've already mentioned the use of this color in the flag, even in police lights, as a symbol of authority. This subconscious coding is actually done in hundreds of symbolic concepts that we would say, what is the relevance? Such as the fact that super powerful characters in comic books usually wear uniforms of this color. Obey this lineage. They are strong, mighty. The message that if you go against their system, you will pay the price. Isn't the world really a strange planet? We think we know everything, even though we know almost nothing about our history, our beliefs, our origins. However, look what results come out even from a simple research I have done myself. I will leave all the sources I can in the description of the books. Please read, research, make cross connections yourself. After all, this is a big secret, a mystery. There is no way one person can solve it. Maybe one of you will perfectly understand the connection with religions. Some of you will be able to connect it to culture. But ultimately, as we share and combine this information, we can solve the puzzle together. The purpose of giving you the information and theories that I just mentioned in this video is not to say that everything you believe in is a lie. As I always say, belief is an important concept for me. I am just sharing with you the facts or possible facts behind what is being imposed on us. I am presenting theories so that I can look at things outside the box. Now, there is no need to get into unnecessary confusions of concepts such as, I used to say Allah. Now what am I going to say? What is my faith going to be? If you believe in a creator above everything, keep believing. You can call him Allah, you can call him God, you can call him Lord. What matters is your intention. Look, Buddhists have not even given this being a name because they believe that man cannot comprehend it. Look at it a little more abstractly. For years, we have been told that the Creator is constantly intervening in everything. Why would the Creator interfere in the order He created? Did He give us free will and choice for nothing? If there is going to be a type that interferes in every step you take, then he is already a ruler rather than a creator, which leads you to the Anunnaki belief you just mentioned. Anyway, if you pay attention, there has been no intervention for thousands of years. If there was, the world wouldn't be like this, would it? People are still saying the same things when the oppressor oppresses the oppressed, and they are just waiting. Even the bones of many of those who waited are gone. Today, you are watching from the front in various parts of the world how the oppressor cuts and crushes the innocent. But no one is coming. Why not? Because you are in a system created with a concept like free will. God has given you a brain. Use it. Develop yourself. Unite. Elect moral leaders. Raise generations that look after the future of their country. Develop in science and technology. See if they can crush you then. See how the world is then. But there is no but we are just sitting and waiting for the arrival of winged beings from the skies. For thousands of years. If you are a believer, look for the real creator beyond all these symbolic concepts. What we have just talked about is a theory. It is not yet a clearly proven concept. Yes, it's a practical one, but it's still being researched. For example, let's say it turns out that the Anunnaki created man. Let's say it turns out that these people are the origin of all religions, all books, as I have just given examples. Why should this affect your belief? Doesn't there have to be a creator for them too? Doesn't this universe, everything, have to have a source? We talked about this scientifically in the double slit experiment video. According to this theory, the Anunnaki simply designed the human body. Even we are doing it today. What does it matter? You focus on the soul, focus on the source, look for the truth beyond all these concrete concepts. This is how true faith is formed and enters you. If you become a prisoner of a belief full of symbolic gestures and concrete concepts in the mind, at the slightest shake, they will destroy all your belief and you will fall into emptiness. So keep searching for the truth in your own way. After all, as they say, seekers will find. I hope the video was useful for those who want to deepen their research on the subject. As I said, many more examples of the examples I gave are written in the books in the explanation section. I recommend you to read them. I will also continue to share videos on the subheadings of the subject with you. Stay tuned. In the comments section, please write which topics you would like to see in more detail. I will add them to my to-do list. If you like the video, please don't forget to share it and subscribe to the channel to help the truth grow. I would also like to thank my members for their support every month. Take care until next week.